As the 12th century dawned, recent events had set certain secret elements at court to roiling amongst themselves. Patriarch Erhard, for example, upset at the failed crusade and hungry for land to truly rule over apart from the Volksreich, began to express his discontent. He petitioned the Kaiserin for increased autonomy, but she refused him, due in part to the embarrassment he caused her in the east. He then had his bishops and priests around the Volksreich ask for increased powers, positions, and leniencies, thinking that she would grant them if petitioned enough. Instead, she declared that clergy were not allowed in her courtroom unless she expressly permitted it. This was not the outcome he was hoping for. He began to pen polemics against earthly power and the crowns of earth, how they are subordinate to God and should indeed recognize this fact, lest the faithful people of the realm pay for it. The Kaiserin passed down a message to him, reminding him of his position and general powerlessness against her. On the 30th of June 1101, Patriarch Erhard declared war upon Kaiserin Sarah the Cruel. Sensing her unpreparedness, Lombardia declared war upon Sarah the following year, hoping to maintain its advantageous momentum against the Volksreich. Despite his current profession as a holy man, he was raised by a man in the employ of the Volkish army, before that man shipped him off to a cloister, unsure of his son's ability to function in battle and make him proud. Regardless, Erhard took his father's teachings to heart, and would have led a most deadly war, had not the traitorous Patriarch Erhard died of natural causes. As such, he was succeeded by Matriarch Gisela, who dropped his war and pledged her undying allegiance to the crown. This marked the beginning of a steep decline in religious devotion within the Volksreich, sparking the church's descent to a subdued role, more firmly below the crown. This was done by garnishing church lands, taxing holy inheritances, removing church officials from secular roles, and even preventing those in the employ of the church from owning weapons. There is even one instance of a church being stripped bare of its opulencies because the resident priest had spoken of Jesus as the King of Kings, this being mistaken as a coded sermon to zealous supporters and not simply as a quotation of the Bible itself. Kaiserin Sarah was not about to have yet another threat to concern herself with from within, and would not spare the innocent in her pursuit of the subversive. Meanwhile, in the east, the pagans began to align with one another, agreeing to defend themselves against attacks from outsiders. They would meet at various festivals throughout the year, changing the place each time so as to distract possible attackers and confound the outsiders who were unfamiliar with the customs of their shared religions. This was significant because cohesion on their part could prove an effective counter against the more easterly ambitions of the Volksreich. A microcosm of this could be seen in the form of Prussia, who had dogged the eastern flank of the Volksreich for centuries now. By May, Matriarch Gisela, languishing under the new restrictions and subjugated state of her office, began to see things Erhard's way. She, like him, began to work in the darkness. She piled up weapons and armor behind the holy altars of churches across the Volksreich, and began to grant indulgences for those who promised men to her cause. She acted quickly, before the church could lose too much of its power, and broke her allegiance, resuming the war in bloody fashion, earning her the title of the Mutilator along the way. Meanwhile, Lombardia was bringing more minor nations into the war against the Volksreich, and tales of the days under Ruchtin were being told again. Tales of near total collapse beneath the weight of being called an empire, beset by jealous kingdoms from every side. The matriarchal war was characterized by its early zeal. For example, several cities in the west were immediately overcome, worshippers and clergy even taking up arms themselves. Sometimes they took these places bloodlessly, but most of the time there was indeed a great deal of blood. Though, unfortunately for the church, they lacked staying power. For all her talent as an inspiring leader, the matriarch was no military mind, which was a problem as she refused to settle for anything less than total control over the war, putting her trust in the Lord to guide her every action and command. As such, the matriarchal war ended in 1103, leaving Gisela sitting quietly as matriarch, watched carefully and skeptically by the Volkish people, as even Sarah the Cruel, killer of popes, thought it blasphemous to kill her own religious head. By 1105, the Volksreich and Lombardia were able to manage a white peace. In the east, Prussia was shattered by a civil war, leaving much of the kingdom to a new rival, Lietuvia. Using the new peace, Kaiserin Sarah the Cruel enacted a series of bureaucratic reforms in order to weed out corruption from within the Volksreich, many of them targeting the church, including the prohibition of simony, indulgences, and putting an upper limit on non-ordained individuals who could serve the church at any given time. By 1108, the church, repulsed by further checks on its power, declared war once more upon the Volksreich, calling upon oppressed Albigensian zealots from neighboring Gevaudan. Though this was a stunning show of religious devotion, this war was not as well thought out, and the untrained zealots were undone after their long journey from Gevaudan. Matriarch Gisela the Mutilator was placed under house arrest in the Cathedral of St. Reiner the Zealot in Schwarzburg, and her dreams of ruling a holy kingdom all her own were put to rest. God may rule in heaven, but the crown rules on earth. On the 21st of February, 1111, the late Bishop Goswin was recognized for his incredible and dedicated piety, having prayed and fasted once for 40 days. He was forevermore known as Saint Goswin the Holy. By June, through an incredible effort, Prussia had managed to reunite its realm. Kaiserin Sarah was duly upset by the news, as she was hoping to invade the fledgling Lietuvia once things calmed down in the realm. In 1112, Matriarch Gisela was murdered by Jewish zealots, fearful of her plans for a holy kingdom, and thus her plans to expel those who did not qualify to stay. Thus, Patriarch Gottschalk Longshanks became the new Albigensian Patriarch. On the 22nd of September, 1112, much to the ire of the Kaiserin, the late matriarch Gisela the Mutilator was declared an Albigensian saint for her martyrdom at the hands of Jewish assassins, known forevermore as she was in life as Saint Gisela the Mutilator. She became a symbol for her dream of a holy kingdom, tossing aside the values of the People's Empire that embraced her church, and inspiring a new generation of radical zealots among the Albigensian minority in neighboring kingdoms. This marked a growing divide between church and state that the new patriarch would wish to see an enemy of the Volksreich canonized. By 1113, Capua had switched hands again, and once more became Velika Morava. By 1116, that title split in two, the western half becoming Bayern and the eastern half remaining Velika Morava. Sensing an opportunity, Kaiserin Sarah the Cruel opted to decisively put an end to what was left of Velika Morava, a kingdom which once gave her much trouble. By 1117, the Arian heresy, which had delayed the establishment of the Albigensian Patriarchate by a significant margin by fighting against the People's Army in the time of Kaiser Amadeus, had begun to spread, centered in Holland. On the 13th of April, 1117, Kaiserin Sarah the Cruel died of self-deprivation at the age of 63. A feared and respected leader, she led her people out of chaos and into renewed power and standing. She left her adopted son, Kaiser Ruprecht, to ascend to the throne at the age of 23.